Hi, this is Gurasi Singh, and you're listening to my Thick Accent podcast. So, through this podcast, along with educating the immigrants about how to tackle the challenges one has to face when starting anew in a new country, I'm also bringing forth the stories of immigrants who have ignored the unwanted voice of racism. And in no way I'm taking the diss at anybody who have highlighted my Indian accent or the fact that I wear a turban. Because I understand that people not always come from the place of hatred. Sometimes it's just lack of awareness or curiosity. So having blinders to these comments is the best resort. And my guest today will back that as well. She moved to Canada in 2019 from Nigeria. Before moving, she has worked with UNICEF as a social policy consultant focusing on social protection parent programs for urban slums in Lagos State, and was also the executive director of AHIF, a non governmental organization dedicated to meaningful contribution to the development agenda of Nigeria. And after moving to Canada, she has worked as an employment counselor for World Skills Employment, project manager for Ontario Health Teams, and now works with Canadian Red Cross. Let's learn more from her how she found her groove in the Canadian workplace and crossed the barriers that newcomers has to face. Please welcome Shola Rose.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you on the podcast as well. So, Shola, before we get into your Canadian experiences, let me take you back to the time you spent in Nigeria and talk about your comprehensive work that you have done in Nigeria. Please share with us a little bit about your childhood and how you got into studying the public international affairs. Tell us all about that.
Oh wow, how much time do I have, Jurassic?
Take me as much as you want.
I mean, I grew up from a family where you would say is a large family these days, but back then it was the regular size. I have four other siblings, so it was a family of five of us raised by my mom. I had a basic childhood. I had a strong mom, and growing up, I remember one of the things that really stood out for me was my mom was not big on us kids um, socializing very much. So I was kind of like a homebody. So going to boarding house was a big deal for me. It exposed me, if you like, to social skills, interacting with people. So I was one of the few kids that would always be happy when it
Okay,
was time to go to school because I knew that was the only time that I would have friends and, I would be able to play with people and there'll be nobody calling me back into the house. So,
interesting.
that was a little bit about my background growing up. I studied my first degree in communications. It was no surprises because, like I said, I'd always loved social interaction. And I'm not sure if this was because I was deprived of a lot of social activities as a kid, as a kid, but what I just remember is that I've always enjoyed social interaction, and I ended up studying communications as my first degree. I got out of school. I did my first job was in banking. Private sector, where there was a lot of drive for funds and operation work, and I loved it for the most part. But it was a bit challenging in Nigeria because it
Mhm.
was very aggressive. Every bank wanted you to be out there and sourcing for funds, and the products weren't exactly very similar. I mean, very different rather. So after banking, I went into business for myself for a while. I did event planning. And
Mhm.
then after that, I decided that I wanted to go back to study. So that actually required for me to decide what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to do something to give back, something that required building people and communities. And I just decided it will be in international development, and I did
Mm.
public and international affairs, which encompassed international relations, international politics, international development, economics, and a few other courses. As soon as I got out of school, I was lucky to be grabbed by UNICEF. And
Mhm.
I worked as a social policy consultant in UNICEF for 2 years. A lot of what I did pretty much was in project management for a particular project that was looking to help reduce the health disparities in slum communities of Lagos. And I really did enjoy that. But towards the end of the project, I got put into working with AHIV to lead the organization. And it was a very, very, very interesting time. The organization was really, really very engrossed in the grassroots building, especially of women. And it was just trying to prevent women from falling below that poverty line. So
Hmm.
that was something that I really, really enjoyed doing because, you could get into the grassroots and meet with a lot of the struggling women who didn't know any better. They had very limited knowledge of how to build a business. So you find out that they didn't have ideas of savings. They had no idea to expand their businesses. They just, treated their business like a pocket, like their purse. So,
Hmm.
there was a lot of building in that area, in helping them understand financial literacy, in helping them understand savings, in helping them understand how to expand businesses and what have you. So it was a very interesting time in my life. And that was the last opportunity that I had in Nigeria before I
Hmm.
had to come over here to Canada with my two kids.
Wow, a lot of change of careers there, from banking to even management and then into public and international affairs. I want to talk about the job that you did at UNICEF as a social policy consultant, and you were focusing on, diverse sectors, the health, education, nutrition, child protection, etc., etc. First of all, tell me, how was you said you were picked by UNICEF? Was it like any interview process that you go through? How was that like?
Oh, it's with UNICEF. It's always an interview process. But what had happened was that it was actually a connection that I made in church. There was this lady. I was still working. I was still actually doing my masters when I met her. I remember she was quite intriguing, lovely woman. She was leading the UNICEF office in Lagos, and she was in my church. So
Okay.
about the time that I was going to do my project, I had approached her, talked to her a little bit about what I was doing, told her my interest area, and just told her a little bit about myself. I had no inclination whatsoever that, she was going to get really interested in me. But she really got fascinated. And the friendship began. And, she was like, you know what, when you finish your program, let's talk. So
Hmm.
once I finished my program, it was right at the crucial time with social protection was a huge thing. I think about that time we were just realizing the impact that all of these diverse sectors had on people within those communities, stopping them from thriving. Because at first, sectors were working in silos. Health programs would go in and do theirs whenever they wanted, and then there would be maybe youth and social development would decide to have one program, and then there might be something within child protection. But there was
Mhm.
nothing before then that was looking at all of the areas that actually impacted the lives of people and stopped them from thriving. And then there was also a lot of it was also born out of um, the research that had shown that there was actually quite a lot of high mobility rates in childcare, in
Mhm.
antenatal, and then there was low vaccination and what have you. So the research actually showed that all of these things, education, health, child protection, all contributed, even environmental factors, to
Mhm.
people being able to thrive. I mean, if you're living in a slum community and you don't as much as have a washroom facility, people were
Yeah.
defecating near where they were eating in the kitchen. So,
Mhm.
what then happens? You have the spread of cholera and other infectious diseases, and then kids are not going to school because they're sick. Kids are not accessing the right healthcare. If you're not immunized, you're susceptible to a lot of things, polio and what have you. So they were
Yeah.
all intertwined, and we wanted to look at a wholesome approach to being able to help those communities there. So that was actually the inspiration of the project. It was multifactored, and there was also another research that was done that even though Lagos State was the metropolitan city in Nigeria and it was
Yeah.
thriving, there was also the consideration that a lot of slums were rising because, in as much as all these beautiful structures, were coming up. So were the not so nice structures with people that were deprived of all of the basic facilities and uh, didn't have access to as much as they needed to be able to, build a strong community.
Hmm. Wow, that sounds so fascinating. Definitely like spreading a word, that awareness is so essential. Even I know that coming from India, I do know like such policies and such measures should be in place where people can have that basic understanding of general, even definiting that you just mentioned. I also want to talk about the work that you did as an executive director at AHIF. With an example, if you can tell us what a day in the life of an executive director would look like.
So my typical day as an executive director with IF was actually always concerned with the balancing of the books because there was a lot of credits that we were giving to all of this market women looking to thrive, and then also ensuring that we're not just giving them money, but we're teaching them the skills. So my day had a lot of interaction with a lot of people that work within that community. I would have meetings with the staff. We would troubleshoot and understand what communities that we were in, what communities we wanted to expand to, what
Mhm,
challenges we had, what we needed to do to improve the areas where we're giving support to. And, it wasn't just, like I said, it wasn't just giving them money. We also needed to understand what their challenges were because throwing money into the situation is one thing. If we don't understand their challenges enough to be able to know where we needed to support them, then
mhm,
we're not doing as much of a good work as we would like to do. So from time to
mhm,
time, they're just different simple situations that would come up. For instance, we had a situation where one of those sort of like slum communities that we were working at caught fire. And because a lot of these people had structures that was built from wood,
would,
it
yeah.
spread all over the entire community. Before nightfall, a whole community was gone.
Wow.
Luckily, lives were not lost, but everything they had was lost because while they were living and sleeping in those wooden structures, they had a lot of stores right next to it or in front of it or around it. And even for those that didn't have their stores around it, all of their money they don't go to the bank. A lot
Hmm.
of them keep their money at home because they feel like the banking system, they don't trust it so much. They don't want to lose anything to interest. They don't want to have challenges of ATM. They don't
Hmm.
want to go and queue in the bank. So a lot of them keep their monies at home, so they lost a lot. The kids books, school uniform, clothes. So at that point in time we have to go beyond just giving them support or worrying about their business to see how we can first of all help them settle back. So in
Mhm,
that situation, I visited those communities, interacted with a few of those women, asked them questions, tried to understand the challenges, and sometimes we would actually look to source funding to support those people out of those microcredit loans that we give them. In some other situations, if there are organizations that are doing things in those areas that we can partner with, we also did that. So AHIP did a lot of things. In some situations, we partnered with UK Department for International Development because after the Ebola breakout that affected Nigeria,
mhm.
I worked in UNICEF then, and UNICEF was really instrumental in supporting the process that curbed the situation. So some of those practices I was trying to also bring into AIF when I got to AIF to be able to give this education to people. We don't want to wait until a time where we have these diseases happening. We want to
Yeah.
prevent it. We want to help them to understand the values in washing their hands. We wanted to help them to understand the importance of hygiene of having the right washrooms and what have you. And also we really also had the challenge during the Ebola situation where there was no structure to help organizations, large organizations that wanted to give to the community had a problem um, deciding what and how to give because there was no structure in place. So that was one of the things that IF did. One of the lessons that I brought in that when people wanted to give back during the Ebola, how can we support you? There was no structure to help them decide this is what so and so is already giving. So maybe this is not what you need to give. These are the list of the other things that you can support with. So UKDFID and IHIF ran a program to find a way to bring organizations together. Large private sector
Hmm.
organizations and maybe a few non-governmental organizations to see how they can collaborate and come together very quickly, especially in emergencies or in situations that require giving back, and
Absolutely.
um, collaboratively do so. So that was one of the great things that AHIF was doing. Besides that, we also worked with other organizations, individual organizations looking to give back to the community, because the practice before I, at least to the best of my knowledge, the practice a lot of organizations had is that, okay, we need to do something for our CSR. And what can we do? Okay, let's go give tables to that school. You don't know if
Mm.
those schools need table. Maybe they don't have a roof. Maybe they'd rather have a roof. Maybe they don't have
Yeah.
blackboards. Not just about what is convenient for you to give or what you think they need. You need to be able to, communicate with the structures on ground in whatever areas. If it's in the community, you want to talk to them, you want to engage them, you want to understand what is important to them before you go ahead and decide what you want to give to them. So those were a lot of the work that I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed the diversity of the programs that we did.
You said like two things. Initially, you said that, definitely educating them way before these breakouts happen. Prevention is better than cure. That's for
Mhm.
sure. And the second thing you said is this giving back is not convenience. It's actually understanding what is required in the community and focusing on that, how you can facilitate those pain points that people have. 100%. I love that. And also, Shola, if anybody, who what advice would you give to somebody who is interested in pursuing a career in social policy development or consulting for international organizations just like UNICEF or AHIF?
I mean, the way I see it, I think if that is your interest in terms of giving back, you will find your way to the right place, or the right people will find you. So,
Hmm.
first you need to understand where you want to be with, because there is a lot of sectors within those areas. You might want to focus on child protection, you might want to focus on youth development, you might want to focus on community development like I did. So it
Hmm.
depends on where you want to focus. Wherever you want to focus, um, start small. Find out if there are organizations there. If you need to volunteer, you want to make sure you're volunteering. The more you do, the more you get noticed, and then the more you have a lot to be able to give. Because in a lot of situations, I remember in the UNICEF project, we worked with a small NGO. We
Hmm.
didn't intend to, but in our research in trying to engage those slum communities, we found out that there was a small NGO there that was doing, some little basic work, such as supporting with HIV testing and counseling and what have you. And, we engaged that small NGO, and that small NGO sort of like became like a mini supervisor for some of the things that we did within those communities. So
Okay.
there he was just doing his own thing in a little way, and then he was flagged. If he had wanted to work with UNICEF, for instance, and there was an opportunity there, we will consider the fact that he was already within the community. He understood the community structures, he had the background, he had the knowledge, and he will be an easy sell. So
Hmm.
my thing is, don't focus on the organization if this is what you're interested in doing. I think the best way is to just follow your passion. If you're in a different sector, see what's happening in the sector of interest that you want to head to, and just do your research, volunteer, find out ways where you can give it in those communities, and you find out that when opportunities come, it's an easy thing to defend. You just talk about your journey, you talk about
Hmm.
what you've done, and people are immediately interested.
So let's just pivot towards your Canadian journey. In 2019, you landed in Canada. Tell us a little bit about your first day, if you remember. Like, what was going on in your mind?
Oh, I I used to be one of those people that didn't think I would ever relocate from Nigeria. So my first day was really, I think I surprised myself thinking, oh, yeah, you're really doing this. I mean, you're here for real. So,
Oh, I like that. You were here for real. I like
oh,
that.
you're here for real. I mean, this is it. So that was a lot of what was going on in my mind on my first day. And there was also, while I had the drive to make sure that we were settled, there was also that um, little concern that, I don't have anybody here. There were no connections. There were really no very close friends, at least in Ottawa where I was.
Mhm.
So it was a little scary, but I was so driven and I didn't think it would impact me at all, that I didn't have family or friends around. But, I think later in the journey, I felt that absence of having family structures and friends around at a time where I really thought I needed it. But generally speaking, for me, initially, it was just, okay, you're doing this for real. I mean, this is it. You're here.
Okay. So I remember in the previous conversation, Shola, we did talk about, some of the barriers that newcomers has to face. Can you tell us about some of the barriers that you have to overcome, which a new immigrant coming to a new world might has to face?
So that's a great question, Jurasis. And I love the way you started this podcast with some of the comments you made where you said, putting blinders on. It's one of the things that has been very instrumental to my journey. I don't know that I intentionally put those blinders on, but I am so focused on where I need to go that
Hmm.
I can't just be distracted by little things that tend to distract a lot of people. If One of the most important things that I've come to realize in relocation is have the right expectation.
Hmm.
I've met people and worked with a lot of people who come from diverse backgrounds and have done a lot of great things, and but they don't necessarily have that realistic expectation.
Hmm.
I hear comments like, um, we did West before coming here. West verified that my educational background is the
Yeah.
exact same thing as somebody working here as so and so. So why can't I just jump into that position? Why should that's the fact that I didn't school here? Why should it be a problem? And I think that I don't agree with some of those thought process, and this is my opinion. And
Hmm.
especially my experience working with a lot of newcomers, I know that every country is different culturally, um, even educationally.
Yeah.
The areas that the things you're studying might be generally the same, but there are aspects of it that will differ. Social studies in Canada is different from social studies in India, is different from
Yeah.
social studies in Nigeria, because you're studying different communities. So there are a little bit of those differences. But more importantly, I think values are also a little bit different. A lot of us newcomers are so fixated on our education. And while education is really important, here in Canada and a lot of developed countries, there's more to getting a job and working in different areas than the actual technical education that you bring in. People want to be confident and comfortable with your communication skills. And when I talk about communication skills, I'm not talking about your accent. It's about
Hmm.
how you approach people. It's about how you interact with people. It's about how you make your colleague feel. It's about
Yeah.
what you say to that client or to
Hmm.
that customer. So a lot of those things are really, really very important in your journey here professionally in
Not
Canada.
only
And
the verbal, even the non-verbal communication
the
is a little
nonverbal
different. Yeah.
communication is very different. What was it that I was saying to someone? I think one of the funny things that I one of them, and because I have traveled fairly enough before my relocation, I thought I knew it all. One of the few things that came to me as a surprise, I was in a meeting one day, and we're talking about something, and we weren't necessarily making a lot of headway. And then someone just said, you know what, let's table this for now.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
you can already see where I'm going.
Yeah.
When you say table it in some places, it means now let's bring it to the table and discuss this. Let's take it down. But you find that
Yeah.
when I got here was the first time that I realized let's table it means, let's put it away for now.
Yeah.
Let's put it on the table and move on. But back in Nigeria, and I think it's the same because we use the British system. When you say let's
Mhm.
table this, that means it's time to address it. Let's put it on the table
Yeah.
and address it. So, those differences, you may think it's nothing, but, they're just little things here and there. So, communication skills, it's a very non aggressive area. And, I remember working with a lady who has such a rich background. She was equally also coming from Nigeria, and she got a great job here in Canada. And, was a senior manager role, and she was so happy. She was one of the lucky ones that was able to get that within less than a year of coming to Canada. So you can tell the kind of experience she had. Unfortunately, though, she didn't understand the communication style.
Hmm.
So she would be at meetings and she would be passionately talking about something, and others would just recline and coil up because, she's making them uncomfortable. And she
Hmm.
didn't realize this for the longest time. It was she called me at some point. She was actually at the point of tears, because
Hmm.
from being a senior manager, managing about four managers, they moved three managers from under her and left her with one. And, gradually they reduced a lot of the things that, a lot of the responsibilities that she had. And she didn't realize. I was like, tell me a little bit about your work, tell me a little bit about what happens. And then she was talking to me and saying, oh, I told them this is not how you do that. When you're working with people from the Black community, this is not their problem. This no, you don't. Like, okay, then, in that passionate way that she spoke, I
Mhm.
really could tell what the issues were. She was really passionately trying to convince them that this wasn't the way, but at the same time, she wasn't validating other people's opinions. So
Hmm.
people would feel belittled. You can't go into a meeting and say no, you're wrong. I mean, you have to take everybody's opinion into consideration. So you want to
Absolutely.
acknowledge what they've said, you want to think about it, and then you want to share your own views. But I find
Hmm.
that a lot of people do not realize this. And it's not unusual that people would have those kind of, passionate arguments in a place like Nigeria, and there'll be nothing. I mean, after that, we can go have coffee together, or we can go have lunch together. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal. It's just you're passionate about your views, and this is you saying it with all the passion you got. But if you do that here, you might make others feel a certain way. So you want to
Absolutely.
make sure that you understand the communication style. And this is very, very important here in Canada, especially considering people that work in sensitive sectors like healthcare and maybe even legal, because it's a very litigious system, and a lot of less developed countries are not very litigious, so we get away with a lot of things.
Hmm. I
So
think you
if
have
you come.
touched you have touched some amazing points, Shola. This reminds me of some of the nuances that I came across. It was also like with the pronunciation and the rolling of R's also, right? Like for
Mm,
example, the word we say work in India, not work. We say birth in India, not birth. That R's happen. I remember this one time I asked this question to my professor. It was like in advertising law, and I said, "What if the guy has registered himself?" She said, I'm so sorry, I'm not understanding. What do you mean? I said, what if the guy has registered himself? I said it like thrice, and each time I'm going slower and slower. And the guy sitting behind me said, oh, you mean registered? I said, I literally said the same thing. The difference was I said registered and he said registered. So that also happened with me. and
oh
and
wow.
this reminds me of another example. It was like you talked about, how people get very passionate, and I am that person. In India, we do have this tendency to move our hands a lot. For right now, also the ones who are seeing on the video, they know I'm moving my hands a lot because that's how that what comes naturally to me. I used to do that. I used to get very loud and squeaky at times, and people might not appreciate it that time. But then I think I transitioned myself into getting a little accustomed to the people around. You know how we say, like, read the room, read the room. I
Yeah.
started reading the room a little more, and then I kind of understood how I can navigate to the further years. Yeah.
Absolutely. Those differences are there. And as much as it's difficult for us, it's also difficult for the people that are born Canadians because, the
Yeah.
person that's trying to understand what you're saying is not doing it to belittle you, but, it's also a struggle for them. So, like you say, blinders, if I pronounce something and I see after the first, second time you're not getting it, I'm going to spell it out for you.
Yeah.
I mean, register, register. So,
Yeah.
I do that with my name all the time. I mean, a lot
Mhm.
of times, people would ask me, what's your name? And maybe before I say the name, I want to spell it Shola, Shola.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
way you're not saying Shula, Shula. Not that like I say, I
Yeah.
wear blinders a lot, so it's not like I mind,
Mhm.
but I know that there's a lot of attention paid to these things, and people want to know: Am I saying it correctly? Are you offended? Am I offending you? Do you feel offended or something? I never get offended with those things. It's always
Mhm.
a laughable moment with me. But I also want to make you comfortable. So
Mhm.
if I need to spell it out for you to know what I'm talking about, that's exactly what I will do. But
Mhm.
if you're going to come to Canada, you're going to have those realistic expectations, and you're going to understand that in as much as it's quite a journey for you, there's a lot of learning that you're going to have to do.
Mhm.
Don't forget all that you come with, because your experiences, they're rich and they're going to help the process, but learn the presentation here. You need to
Mhm.
understand how to present things, here, in order to be heard. So it's
Mhm.
a big deal. I have tons of examples, but I know that we don't have all the time in the world. But it is one of the major things that I find that people struggle with their expectations.
Yeah. But I really wanted to touch upon that point. Also, we discussed that, having these blinders really help you to stay focused towards your goals. And you should not get affected through these comments or these reactions that you get from people. Please talk a little bit about that as well.
Okay, so I feel like people get bogged down focusing on the things that are not necessarily going to be instrumental in your growth. I'm
Yeah.
not saying those things aren't there, and I'm not going to not validate your feelings, but the kind of energy that you spend
Mm.
having those lenses on to see, is it because I'm black? Is it because, I'm a female? Is it because, of my accent? It,
Mhm.
it limits you. It affects your confidence to start with. Because
Yeah.
for me, I think one of the major thing is I'm not going to feel less of myself in any
Mhm.
way. So I feel like those blinders, it, it's necessary for me to also build my confidence, because I'm not going to believe you're going to look at me less than what I bring to you because of my color. So
Yeah.
all of that is, I can't let it affect me. It just doesn't help. But
Mhm.
if you have everything else you need, and even you aren't looking at those little things, it very others probably won't see it. You know how it is when you get a new car, maybe when there's a car that you like, and it could be maybe like the latest G wagon or something, and
Mhm.
then you feel like, oh, this car is really great, I can't wait to get this car. All of a sudden you find out that that's the only thing you're seeing on the road these days. As soon as that
Mhm.
is your focus, you'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, I thought this was unique. Oh, I saw one here. And then the next thing, you're saying the same thing over and over again. Whatever you focus on, you're going to find a lot of it. So you
Mm.
need to focus on the right things to ensure that, you're seeing the right things. When I walk into an interview room, I'm focusing on my social skills more than even what I'm going to discuss, because whatever technical skills I have, it's here. I don't
Mhm.
need to learn it, but I want to connect with who I'm going to be talking to. So whether I'm an interviewer or an interviewee, my immediate focus when I walk into a room is how to connect with the people, because it's awkward for the interviewee. Sometimes it's also awkward for the interviewer if it's
Mhm.
just question answer and it's a bit rigid. So, I get into the room, I talk a little bit about myself, and it's not necessarily all about the education. Of course, I'm going to connect with those skills that I know you're looking for, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I found myself here. All those things that keep people at ease. And then I've never been in an interview where we've not laughed. There have to be
Mm.
things that we will say that would calm the entire environment. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean you'll get the job though, but you want to make sure that people see you as the kind of person they're comfortable working with. Because there are a lot of people with those technical skills, but
Yeah.
if you don't have the people skills, you might not get the job. Because the technical skills is one thing, but people being able to work with you and actually feel comfortable interacting with you is a
Hmm.
huge, huge, huge part of it. So I think that is definitely something that people want to work on. Have your blinders on. At the end of the day, generally speaking, I feel like unless you can see a deliberate intent to hurt you or to put
Hmm.
you down, don't draw conclusions. Give everybody the benefit of the doubt. People
Hmm.
want to just, you know, out of curiosity, maybe ask. I've had someone ask me before, how come you don't have a very heavy accent?
Hmm.
I remember telling a friend of mine that, oh no, she said this and she felt really off. How dare she? But she was curious, you
Hmm.
know, that because she's interacted with a lot of people and she was wondering how long I'd lived here or where I'd
Hmm.
lived before or blah, blah, blah. And, she was intention. She was actually curious. I could tell
Yeah.
she wasn't trying to put me down. So why should I feel offended? And I didn't understand why she was so offended as my friend when I shared
Hmm.
that information with her. But people get offended about these little things. I feel those distractions doesn't take you to where you want to go. If you're engaging with people and they see that little things offend you, how are they going to feel comfortable working with you?
Hmm. Yep.
If you go into an interview room and someone can't pronounce your name and you don't take it in a light way, if you're upset about it, how would I want to work with you? Because I'm going to feel like I can't pronounce this name. I'm going to be offending this person all the time.
Yeah.
But if I walk into an interview room and my name can't be pronounced, and I'm just like, you know what? That's exactly how it should be. It's fine that way, Even I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Really, even I'm not sure of the pronunciation. So however you pronounce it, I'm good. And we all laugh, So when you
Yeah.
say that, it lightens the mood, it lightens the heaviness in the room, and people feel like they can connect with you, they can work with you. But if people feel like I'm going to be walking on eggshells around this person, or I
Yeah.
can't really connect with this person, it's going to be part of the process that would make them not be keen on, giving you that job. So it all comes together. It all comes together.
So let's just talk about very briefly talk about the work that you did with the World Skills Employment Center in Ottawa. Where you helped healthcare professionals see the benefits of the diverse wealth of experience as an opportunity to introduce fresh perspectives and skills, and still while learning and adapting the Canadian workplace culture there. So tell us about that work.
So, I think a lot of what I did there as actually I've talked about a little bit in our
Hmm.
interactions, but
Yep.
I think that was my biggest eye opener. I love that that was my first job, working with a lot of newcomers and, having that understanding of people coming from a lot of various backgrounds. It was very instrumental in even my own process because it forced me to see myself in others and see also a lot of diversity, a lot of challenges. And it helped me to be able to understand how best to help people.
Hmm.
And I am very empathetic to a lot of health professionals because, you see people that are, that have worked within the healthcare professions, and, in all over the world now, especially in less developed countries,
Hmm.
healthcare professionals are, you know, they're really like a huge deal. We
Yeah.
we we value them. We treat them like not lords, but like a higher member of the society. And then they turn their life around and come to Canada, and then they're struggling to find work. And the funniest part is a lot of health professionals have never had to do a resume. They've
Hmm.
never had to write a job application, especially within the major medical field, like the doctors and the nurses. They
Hmm.
don't usually write resumes. Once they're getting off school, they're just, maybe being referred to this organization or that organizations. At the most part, they do an interview and, they start their work. And then they get here and, they don't know what to do. A lot of people are offended, and I see a lot of health professionals are like, I worked as a surgeon for 10 years, a lot of people, some of them are angry, some of them are upset, and, some of them are just confused. Tell me what you need me to do. And, for me, that was really an eye opener in, being able to help health professionals navigate their path because there's a diverse range of health professions, like a huge lot of them, and then there are also other opportunities. So a lot of the help that I did with these people was one, helping them understand the licensing path for those that might be interested.
Hmm.
Also, for me, the most interesting part was helping them figure out other opportunities within the healthcare field that keeps them relevant in the healthcare field
Yeah.
without necessarily being licensed.
Hmm.
And this really, for me, was great in helping them understand, okay, this is how we need to build your resume. This is how the kind of transferable skills you can talk about. These are the strong points that I've noticed with you, in my opportunity to connect with you in the classroom. These are things that I think you should highlight. Have you looked at so and so areas within the healthcare? Uh, I mean, what would interest you? What are your hobbies? What is your plan B? Okay, do you want to still pursue licensing at a later time? So it was very interesting working with a lot of these health professionals. And it was the same thing that I said here that I usually will tell them. First, you have to have a realistic expectation. And being realistic doesn't mean sell yourself short, but it's almost like understand that this is a new community. While you may have the technical skills, there's a lot more to it than just the technical skills. For a doctor, for instance, you can be a licensed medical doctor that is with great technical skills from your home country. But do you have the understanding that here, as a doctor, you have to be a researcher for your patients? Do
Hmm.
you understand the fact that as a medical doctor here, you have to also be a link that connects them with other health professionals that they need to work with? Do you understand that your communication skills with them is very important? And presenting a case or presenting something in the wrong way could cost the hospital a legal suit. So
Yeah.
you need to understand all of these areas that are involved, and that is where I come in helping people understand what the culture here in Canada is, what is important for them to have when trying to integrate into the system, how to make use of their transferable skills, how to connect, and very importantly, how to build their communication style to suit the environment that they are in. So I this built my passion for coaching. Funny
Hmm.
enough, in Nigeria, I'd done a little bit of coaching here and there, and I'd not actually taken it seriously. But I think for me, that passion was rebuilt, and from time to time, I work with people, individuals, to help them, integrate into the system, to help them interview appropriately, to help them present themselves in a way where people can understand those skills and people can, really appreciate what they bring to the table. And they
Hmm.
themselves can confidently communicate who they are and
Hmm.
help people see, how they will be an impact to whatever organization that they work with.
Yeah, you did talk about the coaching a little bit. Tell us if any of our listeners would like to connect with you or just want to have a conversation with you, where they can connect with you.
I think LinkedIn is the best way to communicate with me.
Hmm.
Usually almost everybody I know will connect with me through LinkedIn, except preferred.
Hmm.
So connect with me on LinkedIn. I try as much as possible to catch up on all of my messages. At least I would check LinkedIn once a day, weekday. So
Okay.
yeah, I think LinkedIn will be the best way to connect with me.
Okay. So, to all my listeners, the links to contact Shola can be found in the show notes. So, now, Shola, we are in the final segment of the podcast. I call it Beneath the Accent. And because we are knowing each other beneath the accent, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You can answer them in one word or a sentence or however you feel like. The idea is just to know more about you. So, ready?
Let's go.
What's that one habit that you adopted that has changed your life?
I think the one habit that I adopted early on in life that has changed my life and really helped me is to be able to accept people for who they are and
Hmm.
understand that people bring diverse things to the table. Um, I'll tell you a little. I know this is meant to be short. I'll tell you a little background or context to that. Growing up, even up until now, my best friend, I've had my best friend for over about 30 years now. But growing up, we did everything together as little kids. But as we got a little bit older, I would sometimes get upset with her. Oh no, why didn't you do that? I would have done that for you. Why didn't you do this? I would have done that for you. And then I realized that, A, why should she do things exactly the way I would have done? She's
Yeah.
a different person. She brings something else to the table. And there are things that she has done that
Hmm.
I necessarily wouldn't have done. So we all bring different things to the table, and as long as your heart is right, I'm good with whatever comes. Have the right heart, and just that has helped me. I don't have expectations of people. I just see them for whatever value they bring to the table.
Hmm. Okay. I think I've come a long way, but I still feel like I'm getting there. I'm getting there to accept the way people behave or react to certain things that I do. So yeah, I'm getting there.
I mean, we're all work in progress at the
Yes.
end of the
Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
that said, I don't mean that, when people are unkind, you accept them for who they are, which is why I
Yeah.
preface that with the fact that as long as the heart is right, whatever
Mhm.
comes, I will be able to accept. As long as I know that it's coming from a good place and not a vindictive or vicious or mean place, it is fine. It is what you bring to the table, it is who you are. I can, and if it's something that doesn't necessarily agree with me, we don't have to be close. We
Yeah.
can just be acquaintances. So just, as long as I'm accommodating of who you are, whatever you bring to the table, we're
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. Not everybody gets along with everybody, and it's fine. It's absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
it is
Yeah.
fine.
So the second is there something, Shola, you recently bought but you now regret?
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you something I recently bought that I regret.
Okay.
So I recently was going to travel to Ottawa, and because I was trying to just be smart, I had my dates. I had a meeting in Ottawa, so I had my dates preset and what have you. So I bought the ticket well in advance, and I bought it on fixed dates,
Okay.
not flexible. And as the time grew closer, even though that ticket was cheap, other things came up that couldn't let me stay in Ottawa because I had a meeting for like a day, and I'd extended my trip. Oh, this would just give me time to be able to do an extra 3 days. But then I had other stuff that I needed to do back here in Calgary. So my return leg needed to change. So while I
Hmm.
thought I was wise in buying a non-flexible ticket that was cheaper, it wasn't going to work. So I was forced to get a second single leg to take me back to Calgary. I was so mad at myself. I was like, Pennywise.
Okay. So if you had to describe yourself as a creature in the world, what would it be and why?
I think it will be an eagle.
Hmm.
And, the reason why I thought eagle, and funny enough, these are things that I never thought about before, but thinking about it, the reason why I think about eagle is I have had to deal with some really tough challenges. And my strength never faltered. So I see eagle as being strong. I also love the fact that eagles have those sharp sights and can see from afar. I'd like to think of myself as that kind of person. I'm usually very long sighted when it comes to
Hmm.
perspective. I'm not just thinking about the now. I'm trying to calculate like 3, 4 steps ahead. So I want
Hmm.
to say eagle just because of the strength, the sharp eyes, and yeah, seeing the view of the world just from afar.
Okay, interesting. So, what's next on your bucket list?
I'd always love to travel, and since I moved to Canada, first it was the settling, and
Mm-hmm.
then it was COVID. So I haven't done much traveling since I got here. So I think
Mm-hmm.
2023, I
Mm-hmm.
want to travel a little bit. I want to go out again. I want to be able to see new places that I haven't seen. So personally, that would
Mm-hmm.
be what I have on my bucket list. Professionally, it's always growth, growth, growth. I'm never in one place for too long. And in one place doesn't mean organizations. I
Mm-hmm.
could be in organizations forever, but I have to grow. So I'm looking at what next I want to do. I'm looking at, how to ensure that I'm able to position myself for that next role. I feel like growth is very essential in what we do and who we are, because I
Mm-hmm.
find that the people that that lose passion for what they do is because they are not experiencing growth within the role, and that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean promotion. But if you're not doing more, if you're not improving yourself, the tendency is that you're going to get bored and exhausted and drained out. I mean, I would use Wall Skills as an example. Wall Skills is a fantastic place, but when I started to work there, my role was initially limited. My predecessor only initially met with clients, did a little bit of counseling, and then referred them. But getting into the role, trying to expand my role, I mean, it wasn't very long that I did more than was usually required for the role in terms of helping people with their action planning, helping people with their coaching, onboarding people, being a facilitator within the program. So I'm always looking for a way to grow. Even if the job title doesn't grow, what I do within that role has to
Mm-hmm.
grow. The only way to, and once I've over exhausted a role, if there's no opportunity within there, then I have to look outside to where next I need to be.
Okay. So, do you have a go-to person?
Yeah, I feel everybody should have a go-to person. I have a go-to person for different things. So I want to say I have go-to people.
Mm-hmm.
I struck up early on in my arrival in Canada, friendship with a good friend of mine that works as a CEO here in Canada for a non-governmental organization, and we're more like family. So at this
Mm-hmm.
point, so usually when I'm thinking professionally, she knows the landscape a little bit more than I do because she
Mm-hmm.
has been here for over a decade. So she would be my go-to person because A, she has that similar non-governmental organization. B, we both have the background experience in Nigeria, and then she's also been here longer, so she's my go-to person professionally. And then sometimes you just want to connect with people for other not so professional related
Mm-hmm.
things in terms of integrating into the society, understanding what kind of sports that maybe my children and I can enjoy
Mm-hmm.
in winter. I have other people for that as well. So it depends on what I'm looking at. I have go to,
Okay.
and I still have a mentor back in Nigeria, my boss in UNICEF. I
Mm-hmm.
would reach out to him every now and then. When because he is very strong with conflict management. So in some situations when I'm dealing with scenarios where I need to help people, and in project management, that is pretty common. The larger the project, maybe the more conflicts you might need to manage. So
Mm-hmm.
in those situations, I might have an idea, but if I want my action to be richer, I'm going to consult people because you never can know it all. So once I consult people, I take a little bit from here and here, and then I combine it and make it my own. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be better than what one person told me or the one
Yeah.
thing that I would have done. That's definitely something that I always tap into,
Oh,
resources of people.
perfect. Perfect answer, I would say. Okay. So, Shola, if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Also, in West Africa, we have yam. It's a little bit like potato,
Yeah.
but it's different. It's bigger and it's different, and it's just my favorite thing.
Mhm.
Usually, I would combine it with some fried sauce, or could be some sort of fried eggs or something. But
Mhm.
yam, if I had to choose the one thing that I would end up with for the rest of my life, I think I can survive if it's yam.
Okay. I know what is yam. I had a friend from Nigeria. He used to eat yam a lot. I mean, it does look like sweet potatoes a lot, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
It does.
Okay, Shola, so describe Canada in one word or a sentence.
One word, I would say accommodating. I mean, in all aspects of Canada, it's one thing you can take away from Canada is its accommodating nature. It's and it's always work in progress. They keep doing more and more just to just to be able to make sure that everyone feels accommodated. So, if I
Hmm.
had to describe Canada in one word, yeah, that would be it. Accommodating.
Okay. Okay. And finally, if you could leave me with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Be you. You know, don't let whatever um, your experiences are change your perception of who you are.
Mhm.
Stay true to yourself. Of
Mhm.
course, there's always an opportunity to learn and be a better
Mhm.
version of you, but never lose the core you. Stay you. You'd never be a good. You never be good at being somebody else. The best you can always come is as you. So develop you, improve you, learn more, but be you. Let it always be you.
Love that. Love that. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Shola, for being on the podcast and adding value to my listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Jurassic. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, listener, thank you for making it to the end. I highly, highly appreciate you listening the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't as yet, and please share with your friends or anybody you think would like it. And like I always say, we encourage you to follow your heart, but also us on Instagram. The handle is mythicaccent. You can also leave us a review or write to us at hello@mythicaccent.com. So stay tuned and let's continue knowing each other beneath the accent.